And we are back. Welcome back, everyone, to the Pitre podcast. We have some very somber news, unfortunately, with the passing of Charlie Kirk. So, listen, I'm going to say this in the very beginning. Regardless of what you thought about the man, whether you thought that whether you were a fan of his content, you agreed with his principles and or opinions, you're more Republican, right-leaning, whether that's you or you're on the opposite end of the spectrum where you despised him, you didn't agree with any of his principles or teachings, you were not a fan of his whatsoever, you are left-leaning, that doesn't matter, right? Because at the end of the day, this country is based on freedom of speech. He exercises freedom of speech. Granted, there's a lot of people that agree with him, a lot of people that didn't agree with him. Even if you disagreed with him, he doesn't have to die for words, Even if you disagree with him, that doesn't mean that you should parade around his death and make fun of his death, right? I think that's wrong at the end of the day. It's not like he was a dictator or a serial killer or any of that stuff. Yes, he did have some very radical views, which a lot of people did not agree with. Views that there was times where I agreed with him to an extent, and there was times where I completely disagreed with him. I was not a fan whatsoever, but I wouldn't want to wish death on him. I really wouldn't want to wish death on anyone. So there's a lot of people online that are just like making fun of basically how he died and like the irony of him being, pro-gun and dying by a mass shooting, that kind of stuff. I think that's wrong. I don't think that's right. Whether you agree with him or not, it's not cool. He was a parent, he was a dad, he was a husband. And again, I'm not even a fan of him. I never really consumed his content that much. I was seeing some of his clips online, and some of it would be outlandish. I'd be like, yo, this guy's a dickhead. I really wasn't a fan whatsoever. Again, there were some things where I heard and I'm like, all right, maybe he's not so bad. Or some things that I heard was like, all right, I actually can see his point of view. I actually agree with that portion. And I'm more moderate leaning. I think both sides are full of shit. I think the right's full of shit. I think the left's full of shit. I think if you lean into one side more than the other and you go hard for one side and agree with all the principles on the one side, you're clearly getting manipulated. I'm sorry to say it. But again, not a fan. Oftentimes I disagreed with him, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't want to wish death on anyone. That's a terrible way to go out in front of your wife and kids. I don't think he deserved it for his political views or for his opinions or for stuff that he said in the past. So you can be offended by it, but I wouldn't want to wish death on a man. Like, for instance, there's some. This is mostly right-leaning political correspondence, but a lot of conservative media people or conservative influencers and stuff, they've talked shit about the Hispanic community. They talk shit about the Puerto Rican community in particular. I wouldn't wish them dead. Even though they're talking shit about me and my people, I wouldn't want them to be shot in the neck and murdered in front of thousands of people. It's not what I want. It's not what I stand for. So I'm not necessarily affected by Charlie Kirk's death, to be entirely honest with you, because again, I'm not a fan of his. I never was a fan of his. So him passing doesn't affect me that much, to be entirely honest. And again, I'm just being honest. It's going to affect some people more than others. If you're a true fan of his, it's going to affect you. It's going to devastate you. There's people in the political realm that I listen to on a day-to-day basis, quite literally, and they were to die, I'd be devastated. Charlie Kirk just wasn't one of those people for me. It is what it is. Again, doesn't mean that I wish death on him. Doesn't mean that I want him to die. Doesn't mean that this is right, even though I disagreed with him. But it just didn't really affect me that much. But I do understand the importance of this happening, and I want to dive into exactly what we know of the details. So what happened that day, I think a lot of people saw the video, which if you did not see the video, please don't watch it. I've seen it from multiple different angles, and it's so fucked up, man. It's really fucked just watching, because you're seeing a dude die on camera, essentially. And once you see the shot and you see, blood splatter and stuff, you kind of knew, yeah, he's probably not making it out of this one. It'd be a miracle if he did. But it's sad to see, man. But I want to go over, the details, how the suspect's still at large, who Charlie Kirk was, why was he so controversial in the space, and just the discourse online and that kind of stuff that's currently happening. But this is a really important event. You know, I'm not downplaying the importance of this, even though I'm not necessarily a fan of his. We shouldn't be okay with this, whether you're on the right or on the left. We shouldn't be okay with people who are in the political realm and the political sphere giving their viewpoints or opinions and being murdered from it, right? If you're a hardcore lefty and you're like, yo, there's no such thing as genders, anyone can convert, there's like 52 genders, trans rights, gay rights, fucking horse rights, like all of that stuff. If you agree with that, that's who you are. And if there's like a media personality that's talking about that stuff, it's not okay for that person to get assassinated either, right? That's really bad. We don't want people who are exercising their free speech, whether it be the free speech that we disagree with or the free speech that we agree with, getting assassinated in this way. This was kind of parallel to, like, you know, a time period during the 1960s where, and I'm not trying to compare Charlie Kirk to any of these people whatsoever. I'm just like really just trying to find an analogy. But like, you know, during the 1960s, there were people who are similar to this that were getting assassinated left and right for their views. So like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, a bunch of different people. And again, I am not comparing him whatsoever to those people. I'm just trying to give an analogy of people who were within that political sphere or had or was opinionated or had a certain opinion on things, and them just getting assassinated left and right. And I feel like we're kind of in that era right now, to speak right now. I said right now twice. Sorry about that. That really didn't make any sense. But I don't know why I called that. I don't know why I even brought that up. Whatever. Just ignore that one. But basically, again, it's not right whether you're right-leaning or left-leaning to just make fun of the man's death and getting shot on camera in front of thousands of people. But who was Charlie Kirk, and why was he so controversial, sometimes beloved, other times hated? So I have a freaking shit ton of shit ton of notes here that I want to go over, but first I'm going to go over exactly what happened, right? So Charlie Kirk, he's a guy that, again, he does like he has his own show, which I'm going to go over a little bit later on the podcast, but basically he's just like a guy who debates people. He really came to fame during like 2017, 2018, 2019, when he'll go to like college campuses, which there's other people who do that too, and they would debate these kids on a college campus, right? He's very right-leaning. He's very Republican, right? He that's just like his viewpoint and his standpoint. So he's very Christian and believes in Christian values and principles. He's very like pro-life, pro-marriage, pro-having kids. He had a very staunch pro-Israel take up until like literally towards the very end of his death, is where he was starting to waver and start to look at things differently there in that regard. But that's what's kind of his opinions, if you will, just like a general basis of like his opinions. Of course, like there was other more controversial stuff that he discussed and talked about during these debates, but that's what he was most known for, just going to these college campuses and debating some of the kids that are there. Now, if anyone's been to college, you know most of the people who go to college or are in college, they're more liberal. They tend to be more liberal statistically, right? There are like right-leaning colleges, if you will, but most of the kids who go to college are more liberal. So that's how basically that's the reason why he would go to college, is to do these debates, to debate people who are of opposite minded of him. And I would say this of Charlie Kirk, right? He wasn't afraid to debate people who had a completely different opinion from his. So there's a lot of people that are very opinionated online, but they don't want to debate anyone. Whether it be they're like political influencers, or they're just like within that space or a professor or something along those lines, political science professor. So there's a lot of people that have these opinions, but they don't want to debate anyone, right? And debating is big within that sphere. Debating is really, really important. A debate can literally make or break your career. That's how important it is. So he was not afraid to debate people and talk to people who were completely of the different mindset of his. There was times where he'd school them. There was times where, he would get the better of them. There was other times where people got the better of him, and we saw that online. There was times where his video pop up and he's just getting shitted on, and he really didn't have a rebuttal for what the other person's saying. There's other times where he was completely shitting on the person's point of view, and he was making the other person's point of view look stupid. So that's basically what he was known for, and he was doing this on a college campus, and that's what led to the event. So he was 31 years old. He had been invited to speak at Utah Valley University, UVU. He was seated under a white gazebo addressing a crowd of about 3,000 people, basically in like a quad and outdoor bowl courtyard. So according to eyewitnesses and the videos taken at the scene, Kirk had been responding to a question about gun violence, ironically, unfortunately. So here's how the question was playing out. Basically, the person was like, do you know how many transgender Americans have been mass shooters over the past 10 years? And the audience member asked, too many, replied Kirk. So the questioner again said there had been 5 in 10 years, and asked Kirk how many mass shooters there had been in that time. Counting or not counting gang violence, was Kirk's reply. Then a single shot rang out. It was about 12:20 local time. He got shot on the left side of his neck, and you see that the blood spouting over everywhere. Then, the crowd was in shock. The crowd was running. They were frantic. And then he was rushed to the hospital. There was mixed reports of them saying he's stable, he's okay, he's going to survive. And all of a sudden, the bombshell was dropped saying that he had departed. But who was Charlie Kirk? So he was most known for Turning Point USA, TPUSA. So he co-founded this organization in 2012. It's a co-funded organization. Its mission was organizing students and young people around conservative principles, free markets, limited government, and fiscal responsibility. Right? So media presence was known for. He hosted the Charlie Kirk Show, become a frequent commentator, made appearances on major conservative media outlets like Fox News, that kind of stuff. Political alignment, so he was closely aligned with the MAGA correlation, so that's like freaking Trump's whole party. So very pivotal in U.S. politics, supporting Donald Trump and conservative causes, right? So that's what he was known for. So he was a really big part in Donald Trump kind of getting elected the second time around. He was very pivotal. Like the podcasting sphere, that influencer sphere, a lot of people downplay as far as like how important it is in these kind of elections nowadays. But basically, if you're not going on podcasts, if you're not talking to these political influencers, it's going to be hard for you to get the vote of the younger demographic, whether that be, from late teenager 18 up until like millennials of my age, right? Depending on the podcast you go to, and like, each podcast is, or political influencers, like viewer base differs. So it is very important for any politician nowadays, in order to get elected, especially to get that younger vote, to be on these shows. And Charlie Kirk, he played a pivotal role in getting Donald Trump elected for the second time, and getting that, younger male, which is his most of his viewership was like young males, basically, like college to like early 20s and teenagers, like around that spectrum, who are conservative. So it was pivotal for Donald Trump to get the vote of those younger males, and they got it really through podcasting and through the podcasters that Trump appeared on, and through Charlie Kirk as well. So he was a very important person, man. Whether you agreed with him, disagreed with him, didn't know about him, in the political world, he was very, very, very important. Now, why was he controversial, right? So I've pulled up a couple examples as to why he was controversial. This is not everything, of course. He have said some more outlandish shit than this. You can definitely find those clips on social media, and that's why a lot of people were outraged on him and didn't like him, especially people on the left. But basically, these are some of the things that he was controversial on. So race, immigration, and Great Replacement themes. So he has used language tied to Great Replacement theory, arguing that immigration, especially non-white immigration, is part of a plan to diminish the white demographic. There's a lot of people on the right who think that way, right? A lot of people who are political influencers on the right who think that white people are being replaced in this country, that we are importing all these immigrants, millions upon millions of immigrants into the country, and eventually white people are going to be right now they're the majority, they're going to eventually be the minority by other minorities. And listen, I kind of get it, Granted, I'm not white. I may look white, I may pass for white, But your boy is not Caucasian. I'm not from the mountain of Caucasus, man. That is a I was gonna say Dave Chappelle joke. I think that the joke happened on Dave Chappelle, but it actually was from Cat Williams. Anyway, that's not important right now. I shouldn't have brought it up anyway. But I'm not white. Like, I am Hispanic. I am Puerto Rican. You know, I can pass for white. I really don't look Hispanic whatsoever. I don't know what the fuck happened in my, you know, in my genes that has led me to look fucking Middle Eastern. But your boy is not white. But I can see in a predominantly white country, when there's like a heavy influx of people that are, of course, not white, who are a completely different demographic in you, why you would feel the fear of you being replaced. I totally get it. You know, if, again, I'm Puerto Rican, if like, I was going to use that example, but I don't want to use that example because they're currently under fire right now. So just say like 1 million Japanese moved to Puerto Rico. The demographic of Puerto Rico is, the population of Puerto Rico is around like 2-3 million, right? It's a very small population. There's more Puerto Ricans mainland than there are on the island. So just say like 1 million might be too much for this example. Let's just say like 500,000 Japanese just moved to Puerto Rico. I would be alarmed too, and I love the Japanese. Don't get me wrong, I fucking love the Japs, dude. So if they all move to Puerto Rico, I'd be concerned. I'd be like, yo, where the fuck are all these people coming from? Why are they coming here out of all places? Like, what's the purpose? Like, this is going to, of course, affect the culture, you know? And there's Asian people living in Puerto Rico that have been in Puerto Rico their entire lives. But, you know, having a mass influx of a population going somewhere else, the locals, the people who are native to that region, they're going to be like, what the hell is going on? So I can see as to why white people would feel that they're being diminished within this country. But a lot of minorities, they are very outraged that the white people, or, you know, these conservative influencers are starting to feel that way. Again, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just trying to understand it from their point of view. And that's the issue with this country, man. I talked about this a lot in this podcast. I mean, in this country, a lot of people are just looking at things through their own lens, man. They're just looking at things through their own lens all the time, and they're being outraged on everything. You have to start viewing things from the other person's perspective. If you want to understand that person, understand that reasoning, and find some common ground, you're going to have to try to understand things from their perspective, even if you differ from it, even if that perspective differs from your own. So just take that along with you as you continue listening. So he also claimed that the democratic immigration policies are aimed at diminishing and decreasing white demographics in America, which I just talked about. So he remarks about Haitian migrants, among other things. He described them in negative, fear-based terms, claimed they might become your masters if certain political outcomes didn't go in a particular way. So he was also critical of critical race theory education and MLK criticism. So he has been strongly critical of the critical race theory, calling it a kind of evil or tumor in education institutions and arguing it must be removed. He also attacked MLK Jr.'s legacy. For example, he said MLK was not a good person and that while alive, many people disliked him, that the myth around MLK has gotten out of control. Election denial, conspiracy claims. So he repeatedly claimed that 2020 U.S. presidential election was stolen and implied similar fraud in other elections. Tied into that, he also propagated other conspiracy type theories or type contents, about election fraud, about ideology, indoctrination in universities. So he had some things to say about the LGBTQ community, of course. He has made statements opposing gender affirming care, insisted there are only two genders, and described transgenderism or gender fluidity as a harmful and deceptive. He also once said that people should physically confront transgender athletes in the context of a hypothetical competition and express desire for societal pushback against gender transition. Now, he did have some shit to talk about religion, Islam, national identity as well. So Kirk sometimes framed Islam and Muslim immigration in terms of incompatibility with the Western values, warning of cultural erosion. Critics accused these comments as Islamophobia. So he quoted Bible texts, Leviticus, to defend his position on sexual matters, as far as like why, being gay or being bisexual is a sin. He also had violent and extreme rhetoric and punishment language. So he has used martial combative languages describing political disagreement as warfare, suggesting political opponents must pay a price or that the government agencies are like Gestapo or Stalinists. He once supported using or at least threatening force or violence at a southern U.S. border, saying like you got to get the whips out and that kind of stuff in response to immigration. So he also has pushed misinformation, false or misleading claims, multiple instances where fact checkers said this statement were false or misleading, exaggerating dangers of migrants, misinterpreting vaccine effects, mischaracterizing what people said. So an example, he compared vaccine mandates to medical apartheid during the COVID-19 pandemic. So there's some of the reasons why he was very controversial, as we can see here. And again, that's just me going through a list of stuff that I found online. That's without any real context as far as the conversation, how the flow of the conversation was occurring, what was the context behind him saying that. So take that what you will from it. So I definitely suggest that if you're not familiar with Charlie Kirk or any of his content, to go directly to his content and to watch his content. That's going to be the best way for you to see for yourself who this person was, who he was as a man, the values that he, the values that he basically, I'm trying to find the exact word for it here, but that he tried to portray onto the American people, onto the youth. So that's the best way to understand what he was all about, is to go directly to the source, which was him. But that's just some of the stuff I found online that were of controversy that he said over the past couple of years, essentially, right? Which now reading it out loud definitely made him seem like a villain and like an absolutely terrible, despicable person. But again, there's stuff online where he's saying good things. There's stuff online where I saw a video where there was like a kid who was a gay conservative. He's like, yo, like, welcome to the movement. Like, I don't give a shit if you're gay. Granted, like, I'm a Christian. I don't agree with it. But, like, you know, I don't care if you're gay. Like, you shouldn't have to, you know, announce that you're gay. You can just be gay and that's it. Like, he was saying, you know, stuff like that it, again, when you hear everything I just listed off of the list, makes it sound like a complete villain. When you hear that kind of stuff, makes it sound like a nice guy. There's this gray area in between, man. Like, the answer is always going to be in the gray area. Was he an absolute villain? Was he an amazing person? I think the answer is in the middle, from my personal opinion. But again, don't take my word for it. Go listen to his content to truly understand what kind of man he was and what values and principles that he stood by. So let's get into the shot and what happened, basically, and the controversy behind that. So where he was shot, right? One, there was thousands of people there. Thousands upon thousands of people there. I think 3,000 to 4,000 people in total. So there was a guy on the roof in a crouching position, right? On a prone position. That means he's laying on his stomach, anyone who hasn't played Call of Duty. So he's prone right now. He had they didn't say the exact rifle, but it was like a high-powered rifle, right? So he had a high-powered rifle. He's in a prone position. He's 200 yards, 600 feet, to be exact. That is a far distance, right? That is not an easy shot whatsoever. I'm looking at like 200 yards right now out my window because I'm overlooking freaking Philadelphia right now. And 200 yards, even with a scope, you know, and you're outside, so you have to take in, and this is not Call of Duty, you have to take in consideration, you know, the amount of people that are there, you know, the adrenaline that's coursing through your veins at the moment. At that distance, you know, the wind, the curvature, the earth, gravity, all of that becomes a factor, you know. And Call of Duty, you just aim and shoot. That is not the case when you're you know, shooting a gun at a long distance range. There's a lot of things you have to account for, right? It's not necessarily an impossible shot, but it's a very difficult shot. And basically everyone who is familiar with guns, who is familiar with shooting, is saying online that that guy was trained. There's no way your average liberal just picked up a gun and shot him, right? And made that kind of shot. It's not possible. So that guy was clearly trained. He clearly knew what he was doing. The fact that he escaped, and is still at large right now, just further shows that this person is trained to whatever degree, right? I'm not saying that he was part of like some freaking intelligence agency or anything like that. I'm just saying that that guy knew what he was doing to some degree, right? He wasn't a slouch. He wasn't just anyone who picked up a gun and just shot someone. Look at Luigi Mangione, for example. Luigi, the gun jammed 3 times. He looked nervous. He was fidgety. He got the job done, unfortunately. For this guy, and Luigi was point blank. For this guy, he was freaking 600 feet away, 700 feet away, on overlooking the target with thousands of people around him. Like, it's not, and on top of that, like, the guy's in a canopy too, so it's like, it is not like the clearest shot on earth, and there's people in front of him that are only like a couple feet away. It's not an easy shot, man. It's not an easy shot whatsoever. So a lot of people are saying that guy, he was definitely assassinated. Like, this was planned out. This person was a professional. Someone wanted him gone for whatever reason, and the guy is still unfortunately at large. Now, I think that, one, we have to find who he is. We have to find who is the guy that did this, and we need to find the motive. That's the most important thing right now. What is the motive? Who done it? What's the motive? A lot of people are just blaming it on the left because, of course, Charlie Kirk was hated on the left. That is dangerous. We don't know. And Trump, God, I've been shitting on his presidency a lot because he's just been a terrible president so far. I'm not going to lie, man. But he came out and he basically blamed it on the left too. He's like, the left is dangerous and this, and that. I'm like, yo, we don't know if it's the left yet, right? We don't know. It could be a guy who is right-leaning, who Charlie Kirk, jumped coat on a certain issue and no longer stood for that issue anymore, and the guy's upset at him because have shot him. Like, we don't know what the motive is. We don't know who's the person who did it. So just blaming it on the left automatically because the left had a hatred to him, you're just causing further unnecessary division. You're creating enemies when you don't know who your enemy is yet. So it just doesn't make sense. I would refrain anyone from just outright blaming the left for doing this as of now, because again, we don't know. Is it likely? Yeah, I think it is likely, of course. I don't know how many liberals are that good of a gun, to be entirely honest with you. Just putting that one out there is probably a few, but usually, gun ownership and that kind of stuff, that's usually left to the conservatives and Republicans. But listen, it can be a liberal that done it. That's not out of the realm of possibility. What I'm trying to say is we don't know. And we shouldn't start pointing fingers yet until we know, right? So the guy's at large. No one hasn't found him yet. Not only that, there was a guy in the crowd that was acting extremely weird. He was an older gentleman. He was like, arrest me, I shot him, and all this kind of stuff. It didn't make sense as far as like his positioning, where he was. He didn't have a weapon on him or anything, but he was called into question by the FBI, and they interrogated him. And there was pictures online of him going around. The pictures were not flattering, man. They were not flattering. It's a picture of him. He's very like a liberal guy, right? And you can tell from this picture, he's a very liberal guy. And he had like 4 different flags on him. One was a trans flag, one was a gay flag, one was a Black Lives Matter flag. The other one was like a race traitor flag. He was a white guy. And then, or like he appears to be white. He could be ethnically something else. And like it was a picture of like 2 dolls next to him and him like looking pregnant or trying to cosplay as being pregnant, right? It's a very strange looking picture, I'm not going to lie to you. Regardless of what your political background is or which way you lean politically, it is a very odd picture, right? There's a lot of liberals out there who see that picture and be like, yeah, that's not me. I don't stand for whatever that is. So very weird picture. Again, he can do whatever he wants with his life. That's on him, but it just looked a little weird, or a lot of people were trolling about it once they found out who that person was. But apparently that person had nothing to do with the shooting. He was just acting apparently really, really weird and saying that he done it. Maybe he was working with the guy that was on the roof. We don't know, but I think they released him from being a suspect. So we don't know, man. And it's unfortunate. This is not good for the American people. This is not good for the American public. This is not good for the American media. again, even if you disagree with him, the last thing we need is people speaking out against the government, society at large, etc., and getting murdered over it. We don't need that, man. And if you are liberal and you are, politically on the left, I will refrain from making fun of this issue because, listen, man, if AOC were to get capped, you wouldn't want conservatives making fun of AOC, right? If someone on the left was to get capped, God forbid Bernie's to get capped, you don't want people making fun of Bernie, right? You would think that's insensitive, right? It's the same thing goes both ways, man. And again, at the end of the day, this person was, yeah, you may disagree with him. He was just a person. He never, assaulted anyone, or he wasn't a serial killer or anything like that. So, and again, he was a father. He was a dad. He was a husband. So let's refrain from really making jokes about this as much as possible. And again, man, I'm not even a fan of the guy, but I know what's right and what's wrong. Even though, I am indifferent about it and it doesn't affect me whatsoever, I know that making fun of it, especially this fresh, is not cool. And what this means for America. A lot of people are downplaying as far as what it means for America, but trust me, we don't want this to become a trend where people who are speaking out against politics about, what government is doing and that kind of stuff are starting to get capped. You don't want that. Trust me. So, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. Again, wasn't a fan, but this is unfortunate. It's unfortunate for the right, unfortunate for the left, as America for a whole. Hopefully we're able to catch the killer as fast as possible. Prayers with the friends and family. But that's this episode. It's a very somber episode. I was actually going to cover the whole issue in Nepal right before this. I was literally doing all the research for that episode, and then this happened. I'm like, all right, I got to talk about this now, unfortunately. So I'm going to do that Nepal episode next week. This is coming out. But when I think of next week, that's when this episode releases, if that makes sense to you guys. So when I think next week, when I think next Monday, that's when this episode releases. And for you guys, it'll be in 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks for you guys, for the viewers, I'll be releasing that Nepal episode because what's happening over there, it's fucking insane. It is actually really, really crazy. But yeah, that's this week's episode. R.I.P. Charlie Kirk. I was going to say, I hope you guys enjoy this one because I always close out like that, but this is not necessarily something to enjoy. But guys, tune in for next week. And I'm sorry I didn't drop the visual to last week's episode. A recording slow-mo is going to be like a pain in the ass to get that recording back to normal. So unfortunately, I just had it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and I didn't upload to YouTube. This one will be uploaded to YouTube. All episodes will be uploaded to YouTube moving forward for visuals. And hope you guys have a good one. Bye.